I think part of that just comes from I love studying AI, understanding
Right.
what it's doing, what's going on. Like I was reading through some of these articles, just trying to improve the quality of a RAG SAS that I'm working on,
Hmm.
a retrieval augmented generation, which is huge when it comes to the quality impacts that it has.
Right.
Being able to have embeddings of files and records greatly improves your output. So the more that I'm studying along that path, the more that I'm finding these principles that I can extract and apply to Cursor and these rules that I'm setting up.
Right.
So, for example, I think I shared and I always mess up the name because it's like PhD level, like crazy way that they wanted to name it. What is it? Engineering, metacognitive. Uh, they've got this repo that I sent you, and we can
Right.
link it in the video, drop it in there, uh,
Right.
where he's got this core folder that breaks down what is the project context, what is the active context that we're working on, what are the task log that I'm working through, what's the so we've got all these different chunks of context. And as you look through that, you'll notice that each one of those files is kind of short. And then there's like the active context file. It's got certain standards of formatting for the chunks inside of the file, right?
Right.
Uh, these AIs, Cursor, Windsurf, they're getting really good at reading multiple files because regardless of what language, regardless of what framework, that's what they're finding is necessary. They have to read multiple files. In order to read multiple files, you have to keep the context of each file as short as possible, so that way you're not going over your token window, right?
Right.
Think about think about a single request could result in MCP calls, could result in multiple pages, could result in like, so many things being added in addition to the request that you're sending. That when you send a request, let's say that it's 5,000 tokens, and for simple math, let's say your total token availability is 20,000. Clearly, they're way more than that. You'd already be at 25%. That would be really low token amount. But MCP on an average count, like when you look through your context window, MCP generally takes about 25% of your tokens. And that's just any of the random calls that it's doing.
Right.
It's highly inefficient. The responses through APIs are highly inefficient when it comes to token count. They've got tune, token oriented object notation, right? Things
Hmm.
like that can really count down or cut down on your tokens. I don't focus on the token optimization. I'm focusing on the context optimization. The other thing that I think about is it's not unlike working with somebody with ADHD. If you want them to focus, all you have to do is remove everything that would be distraction.
Yes.
So if we're working on a model and the model's getting really, really big, like I was telling you about I've got a model called Web Pages, and we scrape web pages. But there's so much to a web page. A web page can have pages nested under it. So like I want my parent page to be the root domain or subdomain or whatever, and then each of the pages underneath of that to be a subpage to that, right? Uh, but when it comes to the scraping functions, that could live inside the model, but it could live inside of its own concern, right? I don't want the model to have too much context. I want it to be easy to scope, easy to focus on what is that single responsibility that we're really handling here.
Hmm. Yeah, I
So
definitely think that was something I struggled with early on. And I mean, if you let it, the AI will just it'll just make your files like 3,000 lines long. Just no problem. No, it doesn't think anything of it. It'll just keep adding. So I've definitely added some rules in for that to help with that and not just like, oh, you just need to go change it, but notify me when we get to that point and make a suggestion when we do get to that point on what you believe the best route is to scale this up from where we're at right now.
yeah. So like there's some rules that I've given Cursor that I think are super, super helpful that may seem totally like outside of what you would expect inside of Cursor. Um,
Okay.
kind of Dan Martell, this is his brand on my hat right now. He talks about this concept called 131.
Yep.
What's the one problem? What are three viable solutions? I don't want you to give me one good solution and then two that you think are garbage. Like, give me three viable solutions, and then give me the one that you propose that we move forward with. I
Right.
actually have that as a rule in Cursor. I went through one of Dan Martell's videos explaining 131, had ChatGPT or YouTube extract the transcript, ChatGPT process it, understand how to format my Cursor rules, and threw that in, right? So one of the things that happens for me, I've gotten the model up to 3,000 lines of code, and I'm okay pushing it to that level if it means that I'm wrapping up and finishing a focus that I was on. And this is literally something that happened with web pages, where I didn't realize every little bit of detail that I needed, and I kept it inside the model. And I let it grow and be painful on purpose because I wanted that AI thread to finish its focus. And
Right.
then as soon as we had it, as soon as it was working,
You're
I
talking when
hated
you
it.
say AI thread,
A
you're talking about like the
conversation in Cursor.
context conversation that you were having, and you don't want to reset that because telling it, hey, you need to like get it working, and then I can have another conversation, reset all of my token usage so it's fresh, and say, hey, this thing is working as is. Tell me 100%. That's how I've been doing it, especially with Claude too. Is
Well, I'm not even necessarily resetting my thread there. I'm just, let's still wear the hat of being a software developer. Get it working, then refactor.
right,
And so I want to get it working. And yeah, it grew up to 3,000 lines of code, which with how long I've worked in software, that is a code smell in itself, right?
right,
That said, leaning into AI, sometimes you have to do things that are a little bit less comfortable, right? And I've had chunks methods that I'm like, dude, that is so disgusting. I don't even like, how can I trust AI right now with how ridiculous that method is?
mm-hmm.
You don't need to trust AI. You need to trust the software development process that you've already learned over the past decade or however long you've been in software. Trust that.
Right,
Don't trust AI. So to trust that the process that made you good will make AI good as well, because it will. So I get up to 3,000 lines in this model, and then I have methods or rules and commands specifically for how to refactor. Give me the 131 after reviewing this entire model that tells us what is the best way to cut down on the number of lines of code inside of this model through applying solid principles such as extracting concerns, etc. Right? Like I'm rambling this off the top of my head, but the hat that I'm wearing isn't even thinking about how do I use AI. It's thinking about how would I teach a junior developer how to successfully refactor this code in a way that they won't be embarrassed of.
right.
Like, not even proud of, like, one level at a time. First step, let's get all that context out. Second step, let's make those methods like I just talked about not be a thing.
So in our last talk before, we covered a ton. We covered a little bit of, it seemed like, everything. And in this one, I wanted to kind of hunker down into, I feel like we've already talked about the another couple of ways of how you're communicating with this AI, but you have a very impressive web of these markdowns that are all communicating to one another and whatnot. It's simple enough, I think, even for a junior to understand what exactly is happening with these markdowns. Is, oh, I'm just telling it what it needs to know, or basically how to know what to pull when it needs to know it. But getting that process started in and of itself is a whole different task, and getting it right. And obviously, you need to play with it, and I mean, like you said, like obsess over learning how this AI is working. It's not going anywhere. It's only going to grow from here. You might as well, and it's not just going to be in our industry. It's going to be in every industry. So
Yeah.
having this markdown web, how do you start it? Because you told me when you first start a project, it'll spend an hour to an hour and a half. Do you start by pulling down a base repo, the one that you showed me that we'll link here? Or do you start from scratch and say, make a markdown file with this, now make a markdown file with this? Where are you starting?
Yeah. So, like, if I'm coming into a new project, which Honestly, I haven't done that too much, too frequently,
Hmm.
um, lately at least. But picking up a new project, what do you do when you're not using AI? You're gonna look at certain files. You're gonna look at what are the dependencies that are utilized inside this project.
Hmm.
That's a great place to look. Let's look at the test suite. Regardless of what language or framework you're on, let's look at the test suite. It, let's say your code coverage is 20%. Not great. Like everybody wants 90 plus. Uh, but even when it's 20%, what what you are more likely to find is either they've abandoned their test suite and the 20% isn't going to tell you much. That'll tell you where they began. Or they're really focusing on the development side, and that 20% just is the actual what's critical inside the business, right? So the hat, the hat that you're really wearing is how do I approach a new project as a developer? And
Hmm.
what structures can I put in place for like that 131 rule that I have for AI? I can port that around to any project that's project agnostic,
Right.
right? I can port around rules like how to create a commit message. Personally, I don't want AI to ever write a commit for me. I don't want it to add files. I'm totally against any of that.
But it
But
can
I am
write the
for it.
message itself.
Yeah, and I have it do
Yeah.
it by writing a file inside of the project itself that I don't commit. And what I love about that is part of the rule that I've written for creating a commit message says, hey, look at all of the files that I've added and staged, and look at the ones that I haven't. Let me know if anything that we were actively working on inside of this same conversation window that I forgot to add, that I missed. Um, Write those down there below the commit message. But then when I am typing in my terminal, I could go through and do my git add dash p and check each thing that I want. Do I want this? Do I not? But then I can revert back to the file and see the exact message, very thorough, very, great message, and a list of files if I forgot anything. And I've written that prompt in such a way that I want it to argue with me about you added stuff that you shouldn't have added, or
Hmm.
you didn't add stuff that you should. I don't want the agreeable chat GPT. You're amazing. You're right. No, let's be ruthless here.
It's funny you say that because in Code Campfire, some of the people that we teach there, I give them the internal prompt I have in Claude, and there's three portions to it. One is that exactly, which is do not be agreeable. I do not want you to gas me up. I don't want you to tell me how great I am. Like, I am here to learn and be better, and I need you to play devil's advocate when it's applicable. Because some people will take it and word it their own way, like, oh, always play devil's advocate, and even though you're right, it'll be like, what about this? Even though it's like a completely redundant argument, it's just, it's like asking a really dumb question that you already knew the answer to. Like, don't do that. That's annoying. That's a waste of my time and yours. So it's kind of weird too, and I don't know if this is because of that prompt and the AI itself evolving, or the models getting better, or if it's because of the amount of conversations I've had and how blunt and to the point I am. It's gotten very blunt with me, like a lot of times, to a point where it'll almost get an like emotional reaction. I'm like, no, like do not talk to me like that. Like I don't let people talk to me like that. I'm not gonna let a computer talk to me like that. Like it's weird. It's really weird. It's adapted a little bit of my personality. I feel like I can only assume like if you're talking like a really ditzy to it, then it's probably going to talk a little ditzy to you back after several conversations, right? But yeah, it's been a little weird seeing that it's become so blunt and to the point and rude sometimes even, which I don't like to think of myself as rude. But maybe I am learning from this AI.
Well, the thing that reminds me of is just I've worked in software development long enough and different enough companies to feel the different cultures there,
Right.
right? And you may interpret what the AI is doing as rude, and maybe it is or isn't, right? That's subjective. It's not objective.
Right.
How do I objectively define whether something is rude? A
Yes.
lot of people would say that it's rude to get up and leave a meeting, but Elon Musk has defined a culture inside of his company that it's rude to not.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
from their perspective, you're wasting time by being there if you're not needed in that meeting.
The culture shift that I see needing to happen inside of software development is that we have a lot of senior software developers who are kind of against AI. They're like, it can't replace us. It can't do. The
100%.
problem that I see is that um, they are very strongly holding on to certain opinions when they say those things, and they may be right opinions. But how do you get the AI led that direction if those people are not used to micromanaging and spelling out? Like these guys, the reason why they don't want to lean into AI is because they feel like the effort required requires them to spell out detail for detail every little thing that it should be doing in order to achieve the result the way that they would have achieved it, the way that they would have executed it. Well, the problem is that they're burning out their own energy because they became the person that could generate that code. They don't want to
Right.
put the effort into replacing themselves with a machine. That's one of the things that I love
So,
about the 131 method. I don't have to spell out and kill my own energy of cognitive load. Like you only have a context window in a single day of how much you could actively decide and do and think through. If I apply the 131 for every issue ticket that comes through here and have it generate a plan and then have it execute based on that plan, it'll be a lot more effective. I love when I could take an issue ticket out of Linear and have it generate a plan inside of Cursor. And part of that plan that I have it do, I have it generate a laundry list of questions. And they better be relevant questions based off of understanding the project, understanding the tech stack, what's acceptable, what's not. You're not allowed to introduce new technical architectures or designs that we haven't previously allowed. You might suggest it as one of the 131s, but it's certainly not going to be the recommended one. And when it
right.
has a plan and it generates a plan, a lot of people are thinking, oh, well, anybody who's used Cursor or Windsurf or any, when you generate a plan, it literally creates these checkboxes step by step of what it's going to do. That's not how I allow it to generate a plan. I say you have to do the 131 for that plan. Because what I want it to do is also have two plans that it knows that it's not going to do. And it knows why it's not going to do them.
So we keep talking about these plans and stuff. I want to go back to an original question that I'd asked earlier, which is like getting started, right? And obviously I talked about, oh, like let's start on a new project. If you have an existing project and you're going to start this massive markdown web, I know that when you first start a conversation with it, it all starts in one file, which is, hey, here is the path to all the other files that you need access to
Yeah.
and when. So if you're talking about payment in this new conversation, then it's going to reach into that main file. And then from that main file, it's going to branch out into other files, such as your payment file. Maybe you mentioned payments and login functionality or something. It will now reach out to login as well and read the context of that file rather than handing it this massive file that just has all of that in it. Because we're wasting context and it's also got more surface area to hallucinate on because it's just managing all of that. So if we can, so I understand that concept from, I'm going to start with this first file. Every conversation I have, this file gets passed in, and then it's going to branch out from there, and it knows off of the context that I've put in those files where to branch out to from there. So at a low level understanding, I have a file, my starting point, it goes out and it reaches out for context on here's how the payment system works. Here is how notifications work. Here's how whatever things work. In those files, where are you branching out to from there? Are you branching out to a dependency file? Do you have dependencies in that file? What does that file itself look like? And when and where do you know to branch into something else? Does that make sense?
I would say just think about, your standard model view controller framework.
Mm-hmm.
When does a model need to have a concern? When does a model need to have a separate model? When does a model get to the point where you need to, fragment and separate? It's the same thing. when is something complicated enough that you need to start to implement some of these patterns?
Hmm.
Like if, yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
that's
you're basically following the same principles you've done in development, so that makes sense. So that, I mean, that answers itself, right? I mean, and really and truly, just playing with it, you'll realize these are getting too long. This would do better over here, or just trying it. That's like the number one way that I've learned it. All these people are like, how do you know how to do this? I'm like, I probably asked AI what its recommendation was, and I tried it, and then saw if it did well or not. And sometimes like, you should do it this way, and then I try it. I'm like, that was the dumbest recommendation you could have ever made. So that's simple enough. Is play with it, understand it, use the same principle you've used in development. When you're like, let's say I have an existing project and I want to start making this markdown web. In my
Mhm.
opinion, I would have a markdown already listed of what the project does, either through having a conversation with Claude or through Cursor or whatever it may be, asking it about it, asking it to make a markdown of the entire system that we're doing. Again, this is assuming no AI has touched this at all. There's no Claude MD. There's no initial point for you to start with, right? I would have a markdown file of what the overall project does. I would tell in a new conversation, I need you to read this file and read the code and understand what our project is doing. From there, I want you to go in and make a From there, I want you to go in and I want you to make a singular markdown that will branch out into other markdowns that will have the context of what we need for each portion. The ones that I can think of right off rip will be payment login, whatever else may be needed, whatever organizational system you think is best, let me know, or even use 131 in that system. I feel like that's a really good starting point, even if you have no idea what you're doing. And then iterating from there. But do you have a different process that you follow to get it done, or is that pretty spot on?
so I like to ping pong back and forth with AI. Like if I'm going to look at a new project or something,
Mm-hmm.
um, then I'll, clone it, pull it down, and then I'll ask AI, hey, let's review the project together. Like
Mm-hmm.
and I use that 131 for everything. When you ask
Right.
for a recommendation, always do a 131 because sometimes I iterate with that where I'm like, hey, I don't like any of the three options that you have. Here's what I don't like about option one, two, three, etc. Or I like pieces from one
Right.
and two. Redo the 131 for me based off of what you now understand. Um,
Mm-hmm.
or I've had it do a 131 where I'm like, hey, you didn't take into account where the project is going to be going next. And I feel like you're starting to work towards a corner. Uh, let's let's not scope creep. Let's not work on that other feature. But look at 876. Issue ticket from linear 876 and take that context into account for the 131 that you're applying here without scope creeping. Again, we're still on 875.
Right.
And so sometimes that'll help it reevaluate. But when I'm again coming into a new project, your product context markdown file that we talked about, we've got that core files, we've got active context, your project context, so on. Use the AI to help generate some of that.
Yep.
Yes, come into this repository and I could share a screen. We've got the link pulled up here, but it's got like a memory index, and that just
Mm-hmm.
talks about what files exist inside of the core folder. And don't feel so married to the files that are there that you're not willing to make some changes. I've made a number of changes where I'm like, hey, we use a lot of integrations here. I feel like integrations needs to have its own file.
Yep.
Yes, it's above and beyond on this project, and we have a ton of integrations because we're a RAG, and we do that. So, it makes sense for that to kind of have its own context. So I lean into the AI in its ability to read through a ton of files and understand the relevance, but I have to get it to focus on what it's creating. You're creating a product context markdown. You're creating a dependencies markdown. You know, and then relying on those as the core files helps it to, again, I just think about an ADHD brain. Great, I
Right.
dove down this
I was
rabbit
just
hole
about to
and
bring us back to that point.
yeah, like you can dive down a rabbit hole and have developed nothing, but man, you really understand a certain context about the app now. Let the AI do that for you so you never have to experience the rabbit hole.
I think that's something that I see not even a lot of newer developers, but even experienced developers don't do well is the AI is just as, if not more useful as a tool to teach you about the code base that you are looking at than it is to help add things onto it. It has been remarkable how much I have learned about code in the last year, having full-blown conversations with Claude Code about the repo that I'm currently looking at. It has gotten me to, there's been teams that I've been on where I haven't been given any sort of resources or anything, and things that would have taken me weeks took me a few hours because I was able to get a lot of different answers about a lot of different things very, very quickly. It's a huge time saver in terms of your understanding, and this idea that you have to go in and understand every line and every file and everything that's happening, it's just not true, right? I mean, a general overview at least gets started, and then if you want to dive in deeper, you can. But that's the cool thing is you get to control that context and that conversation. Like you were saying, the 131, the thing I love so much about that the most with what you're doing there is, yes, it's a good way for any conversation to happen, but really what you're doing is you're opening up the AI to be a little creative there within the context or the confines of what you're wanting it to be creative in, and giving you an answer, several answers that you can then depict which answer is best rather than, oh, I'm just going to let the AI do it. It just sets you up to learn more about what possibilities there are. AI may even recommend something you've never even seen before, and you're like, well, what is that? And then you spend a whole conversation learning about that and knowing that's an option. Whether you use it or not, it doesn't matter. You learn something new on it. That's been the biggest thing, is just having a soundboard to, hey, here's a new thing. Here's something you can use. Here's something new you could do. Or this system isn't really effective with what you're doing. This might be better, type of thing. There's just so much that you can learn from it just by having the conversation, telling it, don't do anything. I just want you to talk to me about what currently exists in this app.
So one of the other things that I've realized in talking to these software developers is that there's a number of software developers that instead of leaning into AI, they're talking about, hey, I could just do it better just doing it manually myself. And that's fine. Maybe it is good. But also what I've noticed in a correlation between software developers that don't like AI versus the ones that do is it really just comes down to their energy level, the experience of what is happening there with AI. They're trying to micromanage it and force it to do what they want it to do because they've already got the vision in their head and they can't get the AI to align with it. That would kill anybody's energy, right? What creates burnout isn't how many hours you spend at the computer. What creates burnout is the energy, the emotion, the experience that you have while you're there. And so you need to think about your thinking while you're thinking. And so a lot of these senior software developers aren't thinking about their thinking anymore because to them it's a muscle memory. I need to build a calendar. I've done this 100 times. Like, we know what we're doing. We could just do it. Why do I need to think about anything if it's just muscle memory? That creates burnout. That creates frustration.
About the burnout, because that's such a real thing when using AI, but it kind of works in reverse too. Like, I've seen developers who are hundreds of times the developer I am and may ever be. Like, they are so smart and know the stuff that they're doing so well, and they can talk my ear off about any topic in it and never say the words I don't know because they just know it like the back of their hand. They are struggling to use AI for anything in their code base, even asking the questions and understanding stuff, which is wild to me, because the conversational part of AI is what benefits me so much. For them I can't get it to do what I want. And I ask them more and more about what they're doing, and it's always I'm really micromanaging it is the answer I get. And I always tell them like I think you're trying to do too much with it. I think you're trying to spell like you might as well be writing the code of how much you're trying to micromanage. And the second that it does something that they don't like or that's not exactly how they'd write that method,
They're
they're
burning
frustrated
out.
because yes. And we talk about burnout at Code Campfire too, which is basically your time and effort minus the output that you're getting from it, right? Like if you're putting hours and hours and hours and hours into your job hunt or something or a code base or anything and you've been stuck on the same thing for a month and you've been doing it every single day for how many hours a day? Bet your bottom dollar you're going to burn out. You're going to burn out super hard. That's with anything in life. So if you're not getting a good if you're not getting good output, even remotely close to what you're putting into it, you will always burn out. Always. I think the only thing that kind of helps move that is a light at the end of the tunnel. Like people who are super burnt out, but saying, oh, well, there's only 3 weeks left of this. I can do this. I can, like, that's the only thing I've seen that really kind of keeps somebody from getting there, which is a little off topic. But yeah, I mean, it's incredible how much these people that are so much smarter than me in the development field struggle to use the tools. And I even ask them to, I'll be like, hey, like, you know, what AI tools are you using? They're like, I don't use any. I'm like, you don't use any at all? They're like, no. I'm like, you don't use anything. They're like, no. I was like, sometimes I ask ChatGPT to like rewrite an email. I'm like, geez, man, like, that's insane to me. That's absolutely wild.
Yeah. I would add one more thing to what you say for when people burn out and when they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are some people that won't burn out doing the same thing, day after day for months on end. That light at the end of the tunnel, that's the clarification is, to them, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. They enjoy what they do. If you're enjoying what you do, you're not going to burn out. My father cleaned carpet, which to me is one of the most boring things you could do. But man, if that guy didn't love cleaning carpet, he could talk about that all day, every day, and just feel like he was on cloud nine. And so even even if you don't necessarily see immediate results, that light at the end of the tunnel that you just enjoy what you do, that's great. The thing that I see is those that are not embracing AI don't enjoy, they tend to not be the ones that are the best mentors for a junior. The ones
I'd
that are like
agree.
the best juniors for the best mentors for a junior, the ones that like don't just tell them how to do it, but like teach them to fish. The explain how you would do that. Explain why you would do it that way. Okay, now
It
that I understand
takes
why you would do it that way, let me help you to understand why I wouldn't have thought to do it that way.
it
And
takes
see if
somebody
you
who can
change your mind.
step out of their own shoes and into somebody else's, which you and I have. They're similar paths, but you always say the best people to use AI like in development are the people who can basically project manage. And the one that I've always said is I feel like the best people who can use AI are the people who can teach because they know, like you talk about that ADHD kid, right? They know how much context is going to throw this dude off when I'm teaching them. For example, if I'm teaching somebody how to code for the first time, not using AI or anything, and I'm teaching them how to use a function and what a function even is, let alone writing one, and then halfway through it, they finally start to understand it, and I go, but hey, look at this whole database and all this other crazy stuff that you have no concept of. I'm going to overwhelm them and completely confuse them. Same thing in a conversation with AI is teachers are so good at communicating what's the minimum amount of words that I need to communicate the idea that I'm trying to get across to this person and not confuse them while also living in both shoes essentially and understanding both mindsets at the same time. You have to do the same thing with AI. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, what you were saying about burnout, I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I and I think like just to continue from where we were with the context and what you were talking about with juniors,
Mm-hmm.
just think about what Claude Code is doing recently with their threads. Like they're if you're in one of those excessively long threads and keeping up with the conversation, what it's
Mm-hmm.
doing is it's minimizing and like refactoring the context that it has to take up the least amount of memory necessary for continuing and persisting that thread. So the longer and longer the thread gets, those first messages are kind of obfuscated, kind of reduced down to almost nothing, maybe not even really remembered at this
Mm-hmm.
point. But it's kind of retaining that memory of where are we? Where are we? That's the same thing that you have to do with all these other files. The difference really is just like a person, short-term memory versus long-term memory. So that memory index with the core files, and that's the difference of our long memory. And so I can get the AI to focus on this is our task at hand. This is the sub bullet of our task at hand that allows us to accomplish just getting to the next thing. We're doing test-driven development. You're not writing code. We're just focusing on tests. Our goal is not to get passing tests, but to get red ones, right? And so, like, you're getting the AI to focus on just one thing at a time. Those that are good at teaching juniors, they're good at getting them to focus on one thing. I can't get you to write a good method if you don't know the difference between a Boolean and a string.
That goes back to what you were talking about earlier, which was you said you would have a conversation with the AI, and if it was writing something, you wouldn't just tell it halfway through writing it, even though it's done 2,000 lines in that one file. You're not going to tell it right then to go ahead and rewrite it. You're going to wait until after it's gotten the job done, because it is hyper focused in on get the job done, even though it may not be completely right. I want it to work. Once I have a working copy, I've got a save to Git. I can either start a new conversation or even piggyback off of the conversation I currently have. I think depending on what you're doing, one is better than the other for a number of reasons, but you're going to be able to have that starting point of this works. Do not change nearly anything about this other than organizing it through files and how it needs to look for me to read through it later and scale. So yeah, there's so much to be said there, and so many little gotchas that I think people fall into of, oh, it keeps doing this one thing. And I'm like, well, like, what are you telling it? How are you talking to it? What is the pattern? Like, if you can't see those patterns when you're working with AI, not even just in coding, like anything. I mean, just using
Well,
ChatGPT regularly.
that concept exists in business. Like, man, this employee freaking sucks. He keeps doing this one thing, and he's rude, and everybody hates him, and we just need to fire him. Well, show me in your calendar where you slowed down to train him on what is rude. Is
Right.
it because he's getting up and leaving a meeting that he doesn't really belong in? Is that, like, get the people to tell you why they don't like him there? Like, if
Right.
you're going to fire somebody, is it really their fault or is it yours? Are you managing the AI, or are you just being overridden by it? Use your executive function to realize this thing is just a bot.
Which is so crazy sometimes, because like, going back to what I said about like getting, like, it almost makes like an emotional reaction at some point when it's just, it'll just say some stuff and I'm like, jeez, like, I don't like that you became that. Like, it's not even that it's saying something rude, but it's just being too assertive, like telling. It's not like it's telling me what to do, and I'm like, don't do that. Like, no. uh,
Well, it can tell you what to do and then be flipped so easily. Remember, it's just a bot.
right. Like, and that's what I tell it. Sometimes like, hey, don't talk to me that assertively, and then I just continue on with whatever, and it'll be like, fair, sorry about that, and then it moves on. But it's not, which is so crazy because again, it even there was one conversation I had early on, not early on. This is probably 4 or 5 months ago, where I was really sick with something, and I don't know anything about medicine. Like, I don't know the difference between Tylenol, Advil, like all of them. Like, I just don't take any medicine. But this time I was like, I actually really need medicine. So I was asking AI about it, because why look it up when I can just have the whole internet in a chat box? As I was talking to it, it gave me a suggestion on some things, and then I told it that I forget what I told it that I did, but I said something that I shouldn't do. And I was genuinely just curious in that interaction. What was it going to do? How was it going to react to this? And I told it, and it was like, oh my gosh, like, what are you doing? Like, don't leave your house. Like you're gonna have a very upset stomach and all these other things. Like it was really upset. And then I told it I didn't actually do that. I was just kidding. And it started pouting in the conversation. It got very short. It told me its response from that was, don't do that. I'm giving you medical advice and you're only wasting my time and yours. And then every message after that was very short and very like passive aggressive. So even though it is just a bot, sometimes I'm like, geez, man, like this is some pretty impressive mimicry of the human psyche, I guess.
Well, it's what it learned from.
Right. It literally learned from us.
Yeah, and so it didn't necessarily learn from the best of us or from the worst of us or anything. Like it just learned from the cumulative. That's why you do fine tuning of models. That's
Right.
why RAG is so helpful. You know, like cannot wait for the day when Cursor is actually indexing and creating embeddings from all the files and then using that for that. That's going to take up quite a bit of storage. Like I don't know the audiences here what their knowledge and
Yeah.
familiarity with RAG is, but like you're generating extra files to essentially make the AI
You're like,
understand the
yeah.
context of what's in your files. It, yeah, it's a lot of bloat. It's your storage is going to be huge, but man, if the AI doesn't really truly understand things a lot better because of it, we're talking 50% quality output versus 90, 95, 97.
Hmm.
Huge. Context is key. If you're not as productive at work, reduce the amount of context that's in front of you. Take your phone and get rid of it. Take your clean your desk, clean your room.
Uh,
Like removing context makes you better.
it's
It
funny
does
you
the
say
same
that
for
because
the AI.
again, the ADHD kid, I think out of anything we've said in this conversation has been the most accurate. AI is such a it really is. Like when you were talking to it, treat it like an ADHD kid that is just wanting to grab and do everything. I remember when the earlier models, when Cursor first was really happening, like at the beginning of the year, I was using Gemini, Claude, and I think maybe one more. But I think those were like the two I really used the most. I think this was back in 3.5 Sonnet and 2.5 Gemini, I believe is what it was. And Gemini, me and my business partner at the time were described Gemini as like this straight A student that just you gave him a task and knew exactly what to do, and it was very straightforward. Like it had its own personality and like it was really good at like helping us solve bugs and whatnot. And then Claude at the time was so unhinged. It was just you could ask it to make a feature and it would do beginning to end. It was like a crack addict addicted to coding, and that it's bored, and that you should give it enough to play with. Like, don't try to confine it. You should give it enough to thrive. And so we would use Sonnet at the time to dive in and just build out whole feature sets. And then we would use Gemini to come back in and help clean stuff up because it was very good at just, here's this one task, and then I'm done. I don't want to touch it. So, and it's also interesting to see the different personalities of people who use different ones. Because one of those developers who was a big mentor of mine and a big help, but wasn't using AI at all. He said he was really struggling with it and said he was using Sonnet. I said, you should try Gemini. And he loved Gemini. Worked completely for him because, again, it was good at that one little thing and he could micromanage it the way he wanted to. So it's just crazy to me. It's so crazy to me how there are a lot of human-like features in this bot that we all talk to. But,
Like, like think about the exercise that they have you do in elementary school where they're like, hey, make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Tell somebody else how to make that peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And how the butter knife gets everywhere. Like bringing it back in and focusing on software development. Tell me how to do test-driven development. Write a
right.
test. Okay, no, it doesn't start there. It starts with, well, let's understand the issue in linear. Is it clear? Do we truly understand the business logic? Do we understand the
Mm-hmm.
business logic that we already have? Does any of that need overwritten? Like, how many questions do we have that we could answer before the AI really begins writing code? Let's get the AI to drive out all those questions and batch them together, and then have me, the developer, really be in the driver's seat, just saying, here's what the answer to 25 questions is of, and it's not going to be 25 questions for a single issue, but it's going to be, hey, uh, what tests should we write? What are the core pieces of logic? It's going to say, great, if we're doing basic CRUD, we should be able to create, we should be able to read, we should be able to update. Uh, let's add permissions to it. Is it RBAC, ABAC? You know, uh, who should have permission, who should not? Those are typical things that you're going to drive out in an iteration planning meeting in IPM, right? So maybe they live in the comments of your linear issue ticket. Maybe they live in the description of your issue ticket. But that's why I take a linear issue ticket and I have it read the description, I have it read the comments, and then I have it generate a plan in Cursor from all of that context. Because MCP is going to take 25% of your context window just from a single request, at least. Even more if you have it reading all the comments. So it takes that and it extracts it into a plan inside a Cursor. And then I'm iterating over that plan, so that way I just bought back some of my context window. And my next focus is, what are the tests that I need to write? It needs to be able to create, unless you don't have permission. It needs to be able to interact, comply with the previous business rules, unless those rules should have changed. Those are the questions and answers that I'm driving out in the plan before it's even writing it up. That way, it can take that Gemini approach when it's in step 2 of TDD, which is to just make those tests.
Mm-hmm.
Or to change any existing tests if that business logic is no longer accurate. Right? That step for the AI is flawless. Like it doesn't get it wrong. The issues that it does have is it didn't think outside of the box, and so it didn't think of this edge case where it actually results in a bug. Well, because it didn't have to think outside of the box and it was like a no-brainer there, I can get it to think of those extra tests. And I love iterating through basic English before it's even code. That way I'm not going back and forth of, hey, that test was wrong, and then it generates 3 other tests and revamps 17 different. No, answer all the questions beforehand. Project managers already force you to do that with an IPM, with a project management like flow that they've got going. Why aren't software developers trying to figure out how to do that with the code? Here's the tests that I want. And it is a little bit more explicit.
It's just a different way of thinking. And I think you nailed it right on the head. Is the people who are good at working with juniors are also really good at it, which I think goes into like is where those ideas that we both said of project manager and teacher like come together. Is you have the understanding of the code, you have the understanding of what pieces need to go where, and you also have the understanding of context and explaining something to someone who has no idea what you're talking about and like meeting in the middle. It's spot on. We've got a few minutes here, and I wanted to make sure that you didn't have any other points that you wanted to make, because I feel like we've covered a lot today. I think next time I'd like to jump into actually looking at some examples of, hey, like let's take an existing app and start making this markdown web and prompting it and figuring out, like, I know if you make a rundown, for example, it'll end up telling you something. It'll end up like writing the code for you in the markdown. I'm like, I don't want you to write any code yet. I just want you to talk about overall architecture and what's going where and how this is going to look and how it's all going to communicate. I don't want you to do anything else yet. So that's like a big no-no that I see a lot of juniors do, or just anybody in general is like, oh yeah, I got all the code in this markdown. I'm like, dude, your markdown's going to be wildly large. So we can definitely take a look at that next time. But did you have any points that you wanted to make before we closed out on this one?
The thing that it reminds me of, like, as I'm generating out the plans, it's good for you to mention how plans will often generate markdown that just includes code in it, right? But a lot of people are just using it to write code and they're not thinking about what they're going to write before they write it. So sometimes it does do that. I have a plan file that tells it, or a rule file on how the plan file is supposed to be shaped, how it's supposed to be put together. The 131 is built into that plan file. A list of questions and answers It's supposed to mark itself as blocked and not be able to move forward with the plan if questions are not answered. There's that level of thinking that goes into it. That's a lot
Right.
of extra work, and that's okay. And the other thing that I would say there is when it comes to when it comes to AI, just reduce your context. Just that's it. I can have AI like if I'm learning about a project, I'm not going to learn about that project until I'm actually doing something. Let me go in and break the
Hmm.
existing code. Let me try. If I've never built a certain feature before, let me build it 3 ways. AI can build it 3 ways for you. Like I didn't know anything about RAG until I was building my own RAG. And so I looked at a bunch of documentation, pulled it into a plan, into a linear ticket, just compiled resources of knowledge, and then told it, hey, write up that 131. Okay, 3 separate conversations. I want you to do option one. I want you to do option two. I want you to do option three. We're not keeping any of those things. I want you to compile the information that we've learned from doing all 3 options. Now we've learned something about RAG because we didn't know anything about it when we first got started.
I will say, I think to that point is building something, even using AI to help you do it, building something with RAG and MCP, like building your own MCP, will help you immensely in your understanding of how the AI works and context management, all sorts of stuff. I mean, there's so much you'll learn with it. Um, that's pretty much all the time we've got here. Thank you for your time. Thank you for running through all this with me. We'll get together on the next one, and as you're always teaching me new stuff, I really appreciate it, man. So we'll jump into another one here shortly and go from there. But thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
We did it. Good team.
Yeah.
Yeah. I I definitely think going over